Hello, everyone, and welcome to Film Independent Presents. I'm Rachel Blamer, Director of Events for Film Independent. Before we get started with today's very exciting Q&A, I have to give some praise to our loyal supporters, our incredible lead sponsor, the Hollywood Foreign Press Association, and our screening partner, Vision Media. I'm really honored today to introduce our guest moderator. There's so much we can say about her. She's having this summer of Natalie Morales. I mean, we're such big fans of your work here at Film Independent with Plan B. And I'm so excited this is happening. So I'm gonna let Natalie take it from here, my fellow Miamian director and actress. She is going to be speaking all things Rita Moreno, and I will leave you all to it. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Rachel. I'm so excited to be here with Mariem and Brent and Rita. I'm not usually the person doing the interviews. I'm not very good at this, so forgive me. There's a whole other Natalie Morales who does this usually, but I think what does qualify me is that I'm a lifelong admirer of Rita's work. I'm a big fan of this movie. I'm a Latina, I'm an actor, I'm a writer, I'm a director. I have been
qualified.
Yes, I am. I've been navigating this town for the last 15 years, and I've always been so interested in Hollywood history, and even more specifically, the history of someone so uniquely trailblazing as Rita is. So forgive me if I fangirl a little bit throughout this interview, but I am pretty excited.
Hello, cutie. She comes with history. Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, and Tony.
I was really drawn to her. She made me feel like a woman could do anything because she did. She was a Latina, like me.
She just brings such authority and such honesty to whatever she's playing.
Some people might view Rita Moreno as the embodiment of the American dream.
At the age of 16 years old, she was the sole breadwinner for her family.
Little Puerto Rican girl whom nobody thought much of at MGM with a contract. That's a lot of work.
At 87, with a hit show and a movie in the works, it's a remake of West Side Story with Latino actors in the lead role.
If we thought there was no place for us in this world of the arts that we wanted to get into, we could look up and see Rita and say, okay, well, she could do it. How close can I get?
So Rita, what went through your mind when the idea of a documentary about you was presented to you?
Not a lot.
Okay.
I'm prone to things like that. I just thought, it took almost a year, right? Brent Miller is our co-producer. And actually it was his idea, so he's more than just a co-producer. And I just wasn't really sure that I had a lot to contribute. And, now I've seen the film several times, and I say to myself, man, what a life this is. Really, I'm very impressed with this life.
You should be.
But what's cuckoo about it is that it's, you don't think of yourself, if someone came to you, Natalie, and said, we want to do this, and I don't know how you would react, but it seems to me that the normal reaction is, well, I just live my life, and then you see it put together by a mind, and I'm thinking now of this beautiful woman, Mariem, who's our director, and I think, how did I get so lucky? I think it's a wonderful, wonderful and truthful and authentic and imaginative and creative piece of work. As a documentary, I think it's quite amazing. And I'm just so happy that it happened. That's not an answer to your question, but I always do that. I have long.
No,
I never say yes or no. I have long answers.
It was. I wanted that long answer. I imagine that. I imagine that it must be very strange to have someone say, I want to make a documentary about your life. But it's like when you go through old pictures and old videos, you realize you've lived 100 lives, and you're like, wow, this is just crazy. So, okay, so Brent and Mariem, take me through the origins of making this movie. How did you get involved? How did you come together? How did this all happen?
It's Brent's fault.
Well, yeah, it was my fault, and it was Rita's fault for living the life that she's lived. And I was fortunate to read her memoir, and then I listened to it in her words one day when I was heading up the coast, and I was shocked that no one had done her story before. And I asked her, I said, listen, your story's told, you've done it, it's in your words, it's going to live forever. Do you mind if we take a stab and show your story on the big screen? And as she said, it took some time, but we were working together on a show called One Day at a Time, which also is how Mariem and I met, because, thank you, because her son, or her grandson, Rita's grandson in the show, is Mariem's real son, Marcel Ruiz.
Oh.
So it was, it was literally all in the family, in a sense that when Mariem heard that we were looking to make a film and Rita had accepted our offer to make a film, she knew that we were also looking for a Latinx woman. And if we could find someone that was Puerto Rican, all the better. So Mariem asked if she could submit, her interpretation of what she would do, her treatment of the film. And we took off everybody's name on these treatments and then went through them blindly. And hers was the best. It rose to the top. And as I've said before, we've had no reason to regret it.
I think I had the advantage that because I was on a set, previous to knowing that we were going to do this documentary, and I was observing Rita, who I also admire all my life, because I was there as a mother in that
every
sense.
day, right?
Right. I was able to observe Rita from a different perspective than anybody would have the opportunity to observe her. So I was there behind the scenes, watching her drive to set, being there without makeup, rehearsing, and just being herself. So I think that gave me the opportunity to come up with an idea from what I had seen from that other point of view. So when I reached out to Brent, I remember that we didn't know each other. He only knew me as Marcel's mom. I said, "Hey, Brent, this is what I do. I do documentaries for a living, and I would love to be able to be considered for this." So I had the opportunity to do that, to be able to see something that maybe others didn't know about her. But I also wanted to bring that paper doll, the idea of the paper doll, which is something that Rita really liked. And
I love that conceit.
I think that's that's how I guess I won above everybody else.
I love that it was literally and figuratively all in the family. That's such a great detail of the whole thing. How long did the whole thing take to shoot, from the beginning of Rita agreeing to it to the end, and how did the actual production go?
We're still working on it. No, it never ends. No, we started about 4 years ago. So it's really been a journey, and our goal was to, no one expected the pandemic, obviously, but we did strategically talk about wanting to have our world premiere at Sundance, with the hope that we would have a theatrical release over the summer, and then ultimately would air on American Masters on PBS in the fall. And then we just, it's an embarrassment of riches that it happened to also coincide with West Side Story's premiere, which, as you know, is going to be also in December. So, the stars align when they align, and fortunately, I think they always seem to align for Rita. Well, that's not true. I shouldn't say it. I think when it's time for them
to. If that were true, there wouldn't be a documentary.
Yeah,
everything was perfect, right?
Well, that's what I mean. I don't mean that perfect in a sense, but I think when it's time for them to align, they do align in a really meaningful way. I think, from what I've learned.
I mean, from what I learned watching the documentary, that is my perception of it as well. I read, Rita, that you really wanted West Side Story to come out before your 90th birthday, and it's coming out the day before. Is that right?
Is that crazy? Because, we had to cancel the first opening. So really, West Side Story is like almost 3 years old.
Yeah.
And by that time, I was calling Steven Spielberg and say, "Steven, come on, I'm going to be 90 for Pete's sake." But he did not, under any circumstances, want this film to be streamed.
Yeah.
In theaters, because it belongs on a big screen.
Yes.
You really have to see it on a big screen. Oh boy, oh boy.
Your
And
birthday is the same day as my mom's birthday, so it's a
December
special
11th?
day. Yes, December 11th.
How old is your mom? Don't tell me unless she.
My mom, she's going to be 70 this year.
Oh, a child.
She has her whole life ahead of her. Okay, so Rita, did you have any reservations about having it? Like once you accepted, okay, I'm going to do a documentary, were you like, I don't want you to talk about this, or what if they paint me in this light, or I don't want you to film me doing this?
What a good question, because in fact, I made a promise to myself that if I was going to do this, I was going to be as honest as possible. I mean, if I've left things out, it's certainly not on purpose. It's just that I don't recall. And my objective was to answer the questions I was being asked and answer them as honestly as I could. And I think you can see that.
Definitely.
When Mariem asks me, certain very delicate and sometimes touchy questions. And sometimes I didn't have a hard time answering most of the time, but once in a while, particularly with questions about my husband and my marriage.
Right.
That wasn't so easy because it's so easy really to, we did not have a happy marriage. I mean, 7 years, and then from then on, it became 44 years. And I was very unhappy much of that time. And so it's easy to make the fella feel bad.
Yeah.
Or the person you're talking about, with whom you had this long relationship. And, people, of course, well, why didn't you leave? Ah, well, see the documentary. But other than that, I knew that I had to answer whatever I was asked. There were no planned questions on my part. I had no idea what Mariem was going to ask. But what's interesting that she's said since then, and you might want to ask her about this, is that she was going through a divorce at the time. And Marcel's daddy and she were getting split up. And I think she has some interesting things to say about how my story affected what was happening with her.
Yeah, Mariem, I think that I mean, so much of this movie, in watching it, I don't know if it's because I'm a woman or a Latina or just a person, but I can see your point of view and Rita's, and I can see how her life is unique and also extremely relatable in so many different small areas, and you kind of feel like wow, part of that honesty that you're talking about, Rita, was so beautiful and important to see, because it felt like you were like, what is the point of hiding any of this? What is the point of keeping anything?
But what's the point of doing it then?
Right, exactly.
Are we talking about my life, or are we talking about my life as a fiction?
Right. So Mariem, do you want to talk about that? I don't want to put you on the spot, but
no, actually, we all talked about it, about wanting to do a documentary that wasn't just a show reel of Rita's career, but something that we could all relate. And that was the idea behind it. When I was able to see Rita on a set without makeup, driving to set, all of that, that's Rita, the human being. And that's why I wanted everyone to be able to experience, to be able to relate to her, to be able to say, oh my God, this is an amazing woman, but I can relate because we all go through the same things. And as much as I got to know her and to read about her, I was able to relate so much with my own experiences. And I realized that it's not only mine, but almost every woman, and especially if you're a Latina. So I really wanted to be able for everyone to connect with that, to be able to say, oh my God, I felt that way before. And so I guess my questions came from my own, from what I was feeling or going through, because I know that if I was going through that and feeling that, I wasn't the only one. There's obviously other people going through that and feeling the same way. I realized that there were things that I was going through at my time, 50 years after, that she went through. And sometimes that made me feel more calm in a way, because it was like, okay, I'm not here alone. This is not happening to me. And I realized that it's not only to women, mostly to women, but I've talked to many men also that feel also relatable to Rita's stories. And that, I think, it's what we wanted to accomplish.
That's what's so wonderful too, that it's a surprising amount of men are very moved, as a matter of fact, by this documentary. And they actually, Brent, maybe you can just add some things about what men feel when they watch this. I was surprised. I was very pleasantly surprised, to say the least.
Well, I was walking my dog in the neighborhood the other day, and one of the guys I had conversation with, an older man who's probably in his early 70s, and he had known that we had talked about that this movie was coming out, and he couldn't wait to see it. He's a big fan of yours. He's originally from Ohio, and I saw him just the other night over the weekend, and he came out and was just over the moon about the film in general and how much he loved it. But he got emotional when he talked about it, because he said, I never knew that side of her story. And I feel so bad as a man that she went through all that she went through, which I thought was really, I mean, that answers your question right there. He's a straight man with kids and the whole 9 yards, but he felt bad. He felt like he just felt bad for you, and that he wanted to be a gentleman that you didn't have so often in those early days.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you so much for relating that well. You got emotional, really?
You did get emotional, yeah.
Wow.
It is very emotional, because you're somebody, Rita, that we've seen our whole lives, and then to see this other side of you that we didn't know when you were silently suffering is emotional. I mean, I'm sure you know this. I'm sure you've been told this a million times, but you feel very much like somebody we all know and love, even if we've never met you. So I think that's an appropriate reaction.
But I think what's interesting also about the reactions is that people tend to see the you they want to see, right? On film, on television, as a guest on a talk show. And they just kind of relate to you in that way, so that when someone like myself, who is vivacious and has a sense of humor and is raucous even, that's what people think they like about me so much. And then you see this documentary, which I'm making it sound like it's like a dour. It's not. It has lots of humor too, but it surprises them. And I'm thinking, well, I suppose so, because I've always put up such a good front. I mean, the day before I took those pills, hoping that I would no longer be, I was laughing and carrying on with friends, and nobody had a clue, because I'm so good at that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of wonderful that people see the side of this alegre, energetic woman. I'm all of those things too, but I'm also the other.
Yeah. Speaking of the things that we present to the world and to other people, I want to ask you this on a personal level, because it's something that I've kind of discovered this year on my own, in my own career, is that I want to ask you about your relationship with Latinidad, and like what it means to be a Latina to you in this business specifically, because you're both lauded for it and punished for it your whole life. And that is something that I went through as well in my recent career, where I felt, there was a time where I was like, I can't wear red to any auditions because I'll look too Latina. And I can't, you know what I mean? Like, I can't wear hoop earrings. I can't do certain things because I still want to be palatable and get this job. So I'm the, a palatable version of a Latina. And
not only that. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that only recently did I realize A, what bullshit that is, and B, also I mean, I'm not necessarily entirely blaming myself for having that thought. I was trying to succeed in this business, and I was trying to get work and get roles and do things that you know, I didn't feel were. I think you really laid this movie really discusses it a lot, but you laid the path for like how horrible it is to be stereotyped so often and put into these stereotypical roles. And I really fought against not doing that in my career whenever I could. But the other side of that is rejecting this part of myself that it does like to wear red and does like to have hoop earrings and is a Latina and does speak Spanish. And only in the last few years that I really realized, like, I don't care if I'm palatable to people. And I think just by being myself, I can be what I want to be in this town. So I would love to ask you I imagine that your thoughts on that changed all throughout your career, but I would like to ask you to elaborate on that if you have any thoughts.
First of all, that's very touching what you just said. It's very moving. And it only reminds me of how often Latino women go through this. Not that Latino men don't, they do. I know a wonderful Puerto Rican actor named Armando Riesco, who still has trouble because he doesn't look Latino. I mean, it's really bizarre. You don't either, for that matter.
Well, ambiguously ethnic is what I get.
You don't fit the cliche
right.
of what a Latina looks like. I look more like a Latina than you do in that sense. And my manner also is very, all of that kind of cliche stuff. But I mean, what is your question? What do you want to know?
I want to know what your relationship with that was in your life. Like if you ever, being in Hollywood and being only cast as the ethnic person in something for so long, did it make you go, listen, my English is perfect. I can play any role you want. I can dye my hair blonde. I don't have to be this ethnic person all the time. And did you ever have a relationship where you rejected it or had a hard time with that, of how you were being perceived and pigeonholed?
I couldn't afford to reject terribly much. I was really helping my mom, and I had a little baby brother, a stepbrother, half brother, I mean. And there was very little that I could turn down because I had to pay the rent and help my mom. So it wasn't a question. I mean, I've been asked so often, well, how do you pick your roles? Pick?
Right.
What was I offered?
Right.
To pay any kind of money. Yeah, okay, I'll do it. And the heartbreaking part of it was that it was always these Conchita Lolita people, or East Indian young women, right, or American Indian. I literally have a picture of me with a band across my face and my head, and a feather, literally doing that, playing an American Indian girl. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you a heartbreaking story. I had read a script, because now and then our agents would send scripts out to the actors and just say, this is kind of interesting. What do you think? And are you interested in our submitting you for a part in this? And I remember seeing a script and I thought, oh, I would be really good in this. I just know I would be good in this. So I called my agent, and this is during a time when I was having a really difficult time, as opposed to the other times when I was having a really difficult time. And I said to my agent, oh, I would love to try out for this. Can you call the director or whoever is seeing actors and ask them to make an appointment to see me? And I will be happy to read them, scenes of my character in the movie. And he said, I absolutely will. And I was brokenhearted because the agent said they won't see you. And I said, why not? He said, well, you're Rita Moreno, And I said, no, what do you mean? He said, you're Latina. I mean, they weren't even using that word then. I think
right.
Spanish.
Right.
Spanish. But can you imagine? Can you even begin to imagine how frustrating and heartbreaking it is when you ask somebody, give me a chance. Let me show you what I can do. That doesn't mean I would have gotten the part, but at least I would have gotten the respect of the people who were making this film. They wouldn't even see me for that specific reason. And you just literally go home and cry, and then you get so angry. It was horrible.
And it still
Always
happens
on the verge of tears. What?
Unfortunately, that still happens today, and that's why I think it's relatable to hear your stories 50 years ago, and we can all continue to relate to that.
Yeah, it's definitely happened to me. I had a similar story where I had an audition to play, the best friend of the lead character, and the best friend was like this mousy little girl, and the lead character was like this vivacious, like strong person. And I went to the casting director. I was like, I have both parts prepared. Can I read both for you? And they were so upset they banned me from their office.
What?
Yes.
Are you serious?
Yes.
Wait a minute. They actually said you may now leave without.
They told my manager that I disrespected them in front of the producers, and that I am not allowed to come back just because I said I have the part you asked for me prepared, but I also think I would be great in this role. I have them both prepared. Can I please read them to you? And the producers were like, sure. And then never again. So yes, it still happens. It still happens.
Oh, that is.
Yeah.
Infuriating and heartbreaking.
It is. But we get by. We get by. I have a question for you, Mariem.
And you know what's really tough about that? You then, when you have so many, and I had so many of those experiences, what's tough about that kind of life is not to turn into a stone, angry, raging person.
Yes.
And I always advise young people, be careful of your rage, because it will only weaken you. That's all. Rage by its own nature means that you're frustrated, right? Rage is different from anger. Mm-hmm. And rage is a frustrated emotion. And I tell young people constantly, don't let that guide your life, because you are really screwed then, and you're doing it to yourself.
That is great advice.
Yeah, it's so hard.
Very good advice. I want to ask Mariem and Brent, what did you learn from Rita when making this?
Oops.
Wow, a lot. Something that I always say that I learned from her was therapy. How important that is. If you don't want to become someone bitter and frustrated about everything that you can offer and want to do and aren't able to because you're not allowed or you don't get the opportunity. So therapy is something that I didn't know about her, and that I think is what made her be the person she is today, the happy person she is today. That I would say.
Oh, I just think psychotherapy is so important. Of course, to be honest, you have to be very lucky and get the right doctor. Mm-hmm. And I did. I was very lucky. I mean, we all know the terrible stories about people going into therapy and being influenced in some terrible way. So you do have to have some sense of judgment as to when you interview the doctor, because that's what you do. He interviews you, but you also interview him. Her, and you have to have some instinct about whether this person can really help me or not. That's not so easy. I was just very lucky that the very first person I went to was the person I stayed with for 8 years on and off.
Brent?
There was so much to learn. I think, but through the process, my guess is her work ethic and her level of commitment and willing to keep that promise that she talked about earlier to herself, that if she's going to take this on and she's going to do this, she's going to give 100%. And she did. She gave 100% throughout the whole thing. She's still giving 100%. This woman has been on more of these damn panels the past year than I think anybody. And I feel so bad every time we ask her to do it again.
No, you don't.
No, it's true though. She has an incredible work ethic and a level of commitment that is not, you don't find it often. You know, it's you're swell, Rita.
I think so too.
I think so too.
That's the nice thing about, that's one of the great rewards of therapy, is that at some point, if you've been really working hard on getting, I used to call it, I need to get better. I treated myself like a sick person, and who always found the wrong guys and all that kind of stuff. And I always thought of myself as getting better. And one of the great joys of physical therapy, if it's, psychotherapy, is to complete yourself and to appreciate who you are. I can actually say without one iota of embarrassment that I love myself. That doesn't mean I don't know about my faults or that I'm unaware, not at all. But the day I was able to say that to my doctor in his presence was a red letter day. And I remember I burst into tears. And I said, it's all your fault that I love me.
That makes me so happy. Okay, I have one last question for you, so you can stop doing these panels. You have been asked questions in interviews, not only now promoting this movie, but your whole life. But watching this movie, it did really feel, like you were saying earlier, like you were digging deeper into yourself and being unabashedly honest in a way that I don't see that often from anybody. It was very, very refreshing. Did you learn anything about yourself making this, Rita?
Wow.
I did. It's a good question. No one's ever asked me that. Here's what I learned. I learned that I'd done good. I learned that being respectful to myself is more important than almost anything. And I learned that because of my story. And it's something I would not have really known as well as I do now, having seen the documentary. And I admire that in myself. I think it was tough to do sometimes. And but it proved to me that taking a good look at yourself is absolutely necessary in life, let alone when you're an actress, where it's so easy to fool yourself in so many different ways. I mean, actors can be very blind to who they really are. And it's probably why I would never in a million years marry an actor. Oh, never. Marry one of me.
I feel the same way.
So, no. I think we're difficult people. And I think, yes, and I do believe that, yes, we do tend to think it's all about us very often. And that's tough. It's tough if you're married to somebody like me. And it's tough if you're married to someone who's not in the business, like my husband.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you learned that, because you are, I also love you and I don't know you. So I'm glad you love yourself, because you're easy to love. And thank you so much, everyone, for your time. This was a great pleasure of my life. So thank you.
And I have news for you, dear.
Yes.
You're very good at this.
I'm just a curious person. I don't plan to go into journalism.
You're getting a whole bunch of parts and they're all Latina and they talk like this all the time. You can always do this.
Well, thank you. I plan on being curious forever. So
you did your homework, and I so appreciate that. We all do.
Well, thanks. It wasn't homework. It was such a pleasure to watch this movie. I watched it before I knew I was doing this. I was so excited. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Goodbye, you all.